You're watching HQ Spotlight on CBS Sports Network. The NFL Draft, it is going to be here before we know it. You see it there, just 15 days to go until the next generation of NFL stars are going to head to Green Bay, Wisconsin. As of right now, the overall feeling is that Cam Ward is going to go #1 overall to the Tennessee Titans as their QB of the future. But not a lot of movement in terms of trades in the first round leading up to the draft. Which is kind of interesting, right? Because it's usually something that we do see. So let's welcome in our lead NFL insider, Jonathan Jones, to discuss. Hasn't been a first-round pick traded just yet, JJ. It's the closest to draft day that this hasn't happened. We have to go all the way back to 1993 for a similar situation to happen. But what does this tell us about how talent evaluators, how teams are seeing the prospects that are in this draft?
So it's a great question. And honestly, let me go ahead and skip ahead to answer the question folks will want to know, which is, when will we see a first-round pick get traded? I'm not sure it's going to happen until draft day, draft night, maybe while a team is on the clock. Look, we know what's going to happen at #1. The Tennessee Titans are going to select Cam Ward as their quarterback of the future. Could a team like the New York Giants come through with a Godfather offer? What I mean by that, of course, is one that you cannot refuse, giving away their next several drafts. Sure, maybe. I don't necessarily see that happening. And so short of that, really, the draft starts at 2. And when you consider the guys that are in this draft, right, if you believe Cam Ward goes 1, if you believe that, let's say, the Cleveland Browns take Travis Hunter, who is atop most teams' boards, there's not a lot of guys that you say, in 15 years from now, we may as well go ahead and get his head fitted and for a bust that's going to go to Canton, Ohio, to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Not every year do you have multiple of those guys, but most years you have 1 or 2 of those guys. That's not necessarily the case in this year's draft. You have a bunch of guys who are going to be very solid starters, who ultimately are going to be Pro Bowlers, and you hope all pros, but no one that just really, really, truly jumps off the page really after that Travis Hunter pick. And so because of that, why are teams necessarily going to jockey amongst themselves and trade up or trade out right now? I believe, and folks that I talk to believe, that during the draft, folks are going to begin to maneuver, of course, like every year. But I don't see like the trade that we saw a few years ago with the Niners moving up to go out and get Trey Lance, or at least position themselves to get a quarterback, whether it was Trey Lance or Mac Jones, for example, in that draft. I don't think that's going to be happening this go-round. So we'll not at all be surprised to see, by the time we get to draft day and by the time we get to draft night, that all teams stay in the positions they're in. And then at that point, chaos may ensue.
Yeah, you mentioned that the draft really starts with that #2 overall pick. So that brings us to, at least for now, the Cleveland Browns. We're wondering what exactly they're going to do, whether it is, like you mentioned, maybe Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter. That pairing has been thrown out there. Even Shadeur Sanders, we don't really know. Shadeur is fresh off of his pro day performance. JJ, how high did his stock rise? What is the feeling around the league about Shadeur after his pro day?
Yeah, so really the feeling, you got to look at ceiling and you have to look at basement in terms of where he could go in the draft. He could go as high as #2 overall to the Cleveland Browns. At this point, and really for the past month or so, I have doubted that he's going to go #2 overall to the Cleveland Browns. I do believe that it would probably be a Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, and right now, in the last couple of weeks, I certainly have been leaning Travis Hunter. I'll probably stick with Travis Hunter at #2 once we get to the draft, unless something changes my mind. Where you have Shadeur Sanders, he could go really as early as 3 to the New York Giants. I think he could go maybe as late as 21 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, they're going to have him in reportedly this week for a visit. All that makes sense. You would say, oh my gosh, well, the Pittsburgh Steelers, aren't they going after Aaron Rodgers? Yes. And I do believe that Aaron Rodgers ultimately is going to end up with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but that's going to be very likely a 1-year deal, whether it is literally a 1-year contract or ultimately it becomes that. He's going to meet with the Las Vegas Raiders, a team that he was tied to back during the season. In fact, he would tweet out, I think, something like, "Thank you, Lord," every single time the Raiders lost. And so, look, what is evident here is that because Shadeur Sanders is taking meetings with teams that are picking in the top 10, in the teens, even into the 20s, it shows that he knows that he's not going to go #1 overall, whether someone trades up for him or whatever. Cam Ward is QB1. That was also clear when he and Tennessee mutually agreed to not have a private workout. Rarely does that happen. You can kind of read between the lines and tell that Shadeur Sanders, knowing that Tennessee was not going to draft him, said, why am I wasting my time? Why are you guys wasting your time? And so where ultimately could he land? There aren't that many teams that need a quarterback. Right now, there are 3 teams that need a week 1 starting quarterback, someone who is not on their roster. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. We can pencil in Aaron Rodgers there. It's the Tennessee Titans. We can pen in, if you will, Cam Ward. And it's the Cleveland Browns. And so will the Browns want to get Shadeur at 2? I doubt it. Will they want to trade back up if he's still there? Potentially. Will they eventually trade for Kirk Cousins and he would be the guy? Perhaps. All those things are on the table. But right now, it certainly seems that Shadeur Sanders may not be the obvious week 1 starting quarterback wherever he gets drafted. In fact, he very well may be the backup starting out his NFL career.
Yeah, and there's been so many, little clues, right, JJ, from the cleats, from the Giants to the whole Tom Brady of it all with the Raiders and sitting courtside and all that stuff. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens there with Shadeur. The race for QB3 is heating up, JJ, and we're talking about between Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart. Who do you think is going to fill that QB3 spot?
Look, a couple of weeks ago, I was told that Jalen Milroe may go in the top 15. And Jacqueline, I don't know if you are a White Lotus fan. I certainly was up until the final episode, but
I watched it last night,
Goggins'
JJ.
character, he's meeting with his buddy. And he meets up with his buddy there, and he's telling him that story, right? And he's like, not really. Really? That's what it was to me when I heard that Jalen Milroe may actually go in the first round, not just the first round, but the top half of the NFL draft. But when you think about it, it makes sense. Remember everything that I just said. There aren't that many teams that need starting quarterbacks. Right now, when you consider week 1 starters or teams that need the week 1 starters, again, there are 3 teams. It's Tennessee, it's Pittsburgh, it's Cleveland. Pittsburgh's going to get theirs in Aaron Rodgers. Tennessee's going to get theirs in Cam Ward. And then you have the Cleveland Browns. Teams around the NFL anticipated that this was not going to be a quarterback-rich draft. If you needed a quarterback and you wanted to get one in the draft, this was not really the year to do it. And so, last year at the draft, everyone was jockeying to go get one. Ahead of free agency, everyone was jockeying to try to sign one. And so I say all that to set up the fact that if you are a team that is interested in getting a quarterback and you know he is not going to get a starter, you're not going to get a starter, why don't you go after Jalen Milroe? 2-year starter at Alabama, Nick Saban approved, 2-time captain, a guy who is dynamic with his legs. I am not going to sit here and tell you he is the next Lamar Jackson. I am not going to do that, but we see right there what he was able to do with his legs there in the SEC. But he has traits. And if you are a team and you say, man, this guy's 22 and a half years old, Tyler Shuck's going to be 26 years old, for example. A lot of people considering him potentially QB3. Jackson Dart, there's some things in his game that maybe you think he's kind of tapped out at his ceiling. Jalen Milroe, you don't believe that. You know that he is a winner dating back to high school, continuing on into college. He got benched, and what did he do? He responded and bounced back and continued being a captain of a very proud program. And so, yes, does his game have warts? Of course. Does he have to mature as a passer? There's no doubt. But teams I've spoken to said he was one of, if not the best interview at the NFL Combine. He comes from a military family. And so you know that he is going to go about things the exact right way. You know that that's the only way he knows how to do it. You see the traits that he has. And the fact is that you know that you don't have to start him in week 1 or week 5. Maybe not at all in the first year, and you just let him grow in your system. And that is the way that Jalen Milroe becomes the 3rd quarterback taken in this upcoming draft. I can absolutely see it.
And you know what? It's interesting, JJ, because we always talk about, hey, if you're going to draft a guy, you got to throw him out there and start. But, maybe sitting back and developing behind a veteran quarterback could be the way to go for some of these QBs in the upcoming draft. JJ, we certainly appreciate it. Just 15 days to go until the NFL draft out in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and we are counting down the days. All right, coming up here on HQ, we have to get back to the NBA. The last conversation got a little crazy, and it's going to get crazier because Ashley Nicole Moss, who her and Haley can hoop, top 5 contenders, and why she's picking the Magic at number 1.